Hello there everyone, and welcome back to the neighborhood. Today, we're looking at a DAC amplifier from Hidizs, the DH80S. So let's get into it. So the Hidizs DH80S is a DAC amplifier that for all intents and purposes is meant to be used for your phone or with a computer as a standalone external device. It utilizes an ESS 9281C Pro DAC chip and dual RT6863C op amps. It's capable of DSD 128, 32-bit 384 kHz PCM, and has MQA support. It provides 3 gain stages and both a 3.5mm single-ended output and a 4.4mm balanced output. There's a built-in independent battery and separate USB Type-C connections for charging and data transmission. The chassis is mostly metal with a soft-touch piece of leather on one side. The lines of its aluminum alloy CNC'd body are rather angular, and while I like the look of this thing, and it has a nice heft and solid feel to it, it also has a bit of a sharp line here or there, and I wouldn't want to put this in my pocket with a cell phone or anything else that might get scratched up by its design. I also like that it comes in a variety of colors to match one's preferences, and Hidizs sent me the gold version, which matches the colorway of my reference DAC, the Gold Note DS10 Plus. But returning back to the DH80S, there's also a volume control, but while they claim that this is independent volume control, it really isn't, as this thing is only capable of adjusting digital volume off your device as it stands at this time. There are physical buttons, but they are tied and tethered to the digital volume rather than being independent of it. Additionally, while the MQA worked fine with title in exclusive mode, I had issues with PCM playback in exclusive mode. In exclusive mode, there were clicks and pops with normal PCM playback, but only when exclusive mode was utilized. Yet, if exclusive mode was not engaged, then playback was click and pop free, but in this instance only PCM was output. So DSD or MQA could not be utilized outside of exclusive mode. In other words, I had to choose between exclusive mode with DSD and MQA playback or non-exclusive mode with PCM output. But since it sounded good either way, I mostly used it in non-exclusive mode in the course of my testing to avoid the annoyance of pops and clicks. I asked Hidizs if there might be an update to fix both issues with the lack of independent volume control and the presence of exclusive mode pops and clicks, and they reported that there are no plans to do so at this time. Since they advertise this device as being able to utilize multiple codecs and independent volume, I hope that they change their mind on this in the future, as I'm sure most of this could be remedied with a simple firmware update. Furthermore, during the review process, Hidizs also suggested to me that the DH80S could be used as a standalone DAC via its single-ended and balanced outputs, but in my testing, it was too noisy, even on low gain, to be used solely as a DAC, producing hum and noise on every amplifier that I tried to do this with. I also could not get the Hidizs DH80S to work with microphone inputs, so if you want to take a phone call with it plugged into your phone, it's not going to allow you to be heard well by those on the other end of the line. So there's both good and bad aspects about this device's build and performance. But what about the sound overall? Well, I spoke briefly about the sound in my video of the harmonic dyne Athena, and if you haven't checked out that video, I suggest that you do so. I talk about the specific outcome with the Athena there, so I'll put a link in the top corner so that it's easy for you to access if you're interested in that particular pairing. But in general, the sound here with the DH80S is really good. Mostly, this is a reference sound that is characteristically neutral and excels in the clarity department. But perhaps its greatest attribute has to do with its soundstage. The stage is big, has a vast quality to it, and separation is really good. Vocals are well isolated on an island in the middle of the mix, slightly forward in their step, and have a good presence level overall. Dynamics are also very good, neither going overboard nor insufficient in any manner. If I had one criticism of the sound here, it would be that it's a bit on the leaner side and might be perceived as being a bit too thin for some, but I prefer this presentation. Although maximum power output on the DH80S is only listed at 210 milliwatts per channel on its balanced output, I had no problem driving some pretty difficult to drive planars through its 4.4mm jack, like my Mark II Argons. I also didn't hate its performance with high impedance headphones such as the Audio-Technica R70X or the Beyerdynamic DT880 Special Edition, which are 470 and 600 ohms respectively. It controlled the driver much better with a 300 ohm Sennheiser 8XX, so I wouldn't really recommend using it with a headphone beyond 300 ohms, at least not on a consistent basis. But in a pinch, it would be tolerable with cans that have a higher load. In other words, it's a pretty versatile and surprisingly powerful device despite its small footprint and low price. At a price at around $100, there's not really that much that competes with it. The Centered Stackport HD and Tantrum Space are probably its biggest competition. Compared to the DACport HD, both are relatively neutral, but note weight in the DACport HD is a little more substantial, but the stage is not nearly as expansive. The DACport HD also has independent volume control and a lot more juice under the hood, but does not have the internal battery or balanced output that the DH80S does. Compared to the Tantrum Space, the Space is about a quarter of the size of the DH80S, but also doesn't have a built-in battery and only has 2 gain stages rather than 3. I suspect that it's because of the DH80S's gain and battery that this is why the DH80S appears to have better dynamics and more power than the Space does. Brilliance regions are a bit more accentuated in the Space, and overall tonality of the Space is slightly drier, while the DH80S comes across a bit glassier in comparison. But again, the stage is the defining characteristic and reason to pick up the DH80S over the Space or the DACport HD, as it is larger in its auditory size and scope, and has enhanced depth compared to both the Centrons and the Tantrum. So the Hidizs DH80S is not a perfectly functional device, but it does sound rather good. It has some quirks, but if you can put up with them, you might want to consider it, especially if you are after a relatively neutral presentation with a large stage and excellent dynamics for an affordable price. Hopefully Hidizs will deliver on its marketing promise to provide truly independent volume and also fix the pop and click issue that I referenced earlier with a future firmware update. The Hidizs DH80S will certainly be hard to beat if they do so. And before you go, make sure you give this video a big old thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and consider leaving a comment. I love to interact with the community. And with that, I'm out for now.